Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Barrett. I'm the founder of the National Dental Law Group at Mandelbaum Barrett. I've been representing dentists around the country for 27 years. In that time period, we've had over 2,000 dentists as clients nationwide in all 50 states. And in terms of practice transitions, my team and I have participated in over 1,500 practice transitions over the last 27 years. So we've really seen quite a bit, and I'm delighted to be able to answer some of the questions that were posed to us and hopefully help those out who are interested in learning more about practice transitions. So let's go to the first question. And the answer there is, I've seen it really all over the place. There's so many factors that it depends on, and I've seen people that have been able to stay on for a liquidity event on the back end and receive 3 or 4 times the value. Those people tended to be early to a DSO platform. Remember, DSOs come at all different maturity levels. So if you are in the early stage of a DSO, you are coming in at a valuation that is lower. So therefore, the equity that you're rolling over has greater value in terms of you're purchasing, in essence, more shares or more interests with that rollover equity because the valuation is currently lower. If I'm doing a transaction with a mid-level or a very mature DSO, let's say a DSO that has a couple of hundred or more practices, well, you now have a couple of hundred doctors that have been on that platform before you, and that's going to impact valuation because the valuation is now much higher. So your dollar is not buying as many shares in the business as it would if you were an early adopter or you were early to the platform. But there's also a give and take in risk, right? If you are early to a platform, by definition, you're taking more risk because whether this is going to be a success or not, is still to be determined. If I go to a mature DSO that maybe has already recapitalized once and is a very large organization that's growing, my risk profile, although there's still plenty of risk, is going to be less than an early DSO. The other thing too is if I look at the history, in the beginning of consolidation of dental practices, I think we saw a higher volume of success stories. Their interest rates were very low at the time, and growing DSOs were able to recapitalize and show really strong financials that larger private equity groups were interested in buying into and further growing those organizations. So you saw a lot more liquidity events early on when interest rates were low and the consolidation of dental practices was in its early stages. And I have to say that now, although we still see success stories, they are more limited now, and not only in the size of growth in terms of the multiple, but just recapitalizations in general have been less in number for a whole host of reasons. Some of that is driven by the interest rate environment. Other is driven by the fact that as there became more and more DSOs and they stretched themselves perhaps into deals that weren't as strong, you saw more failures with DSOs occurring. They in some cases paid too much for practices. They weren't as well organized, or the business plan wasn't as focused as it should have been. They agreed to employment deals with doctors that were too short and didn't think about the difficulty with succession planning that can occur. And they also, frankly, paid too much cash up front and didn't create enough stickiness to keep doctors around on the back end by having them carry more equity or having certain cash holdbacks that were linked to future performance. So also what we see today in the current market, as DSOs looked at some of the failures that have occurred, they're trying to protect themselves now by making sure that there are longer employment agreements, by making sure doctors roll more equity over, and sometimes tying equity and or some of the cash payments into future performance to protect their downside. So the deals have gotten more conservative. The multiples have compressed a bit so that the pricing isn't kind of as crazy as it was in the early days of DSO adoption. There are still great deals out there, and there are still DSOs that are thriving. So I don't want people to misinterpret that, but it is a much different market today than it was just even a few years ago.